Hi guys, my name is Lee Thomas. I'm a professional photographer and filmmaker. I live in London, and off and on I've had roughly 10 years of experience with video editing. I went to university and then graduated and moved to London to start my filmmaking journey. So thank you for watching my course. Please find any resources attached. And please do share your final video with me at the end so I can help you with your improvements. So let's jump straight into it. So here is Final Cut Pro. Down here is the timeline. And we are going to begin this tutorial by starting a new library. So I'm just going to call this Final Cut Pro course. Okay, so over here you have the import media button. So select your folder with all your footage in. And I'm going to import all the footage. So if I choose the top clip and then scroll down, press Shift and click the last clip whilst holding Shift, this will select all the footage. So in Final Cut Pro, it's good to know straight off the bat that it gives you the option to copy the files into your library. This will essentially take up more storage if your footage is stored on your computer. So if your footage is stored locally or on an external hard drive that you plug in, then make sure to leave files in place. This will save you a great deal of headwork later on when you find out that you've been working on a project and it's turned into a 200 gig file size because you've had to copy the footage essentially from the original folder. Okay. So let's import these and create an event. Let's call this waterfalls import, and then we choose new project. I'm going to call this waterfalls, and these settings, make sure this is on 1080p unless you are using 4K footage. Keep the resolution at 1920 by 1080, and the frame rate, or the FPS, you want to keep this anywhere between 23.98 and 25p. 24p is often used in filmmaking and makes footage look even more filmic, whereas if you're using 60p, this is for things like slow motion or action sports where there's a lot of fast movement and more frames would be ideal. So for this I'm going to just choose 25p. Press OK. And here our timeline is accessible. So okay, so now we're going to get into the part of the tutorial where we cut the footage and find shots for a sequence. A sequence is a group of shots and they are made from shots that you have taken. So here we go, let's try and find the best shots from this folder. You can drag this item across so it is easier to access the clips. Okay, so if you're following this course and you want to provide a video at the end for me to look at, then I want you to choose 5 clips from the folder I've provided, and we're going to try and tell some sort of story with this footage. So let's choose. Okay, so there are 2 different ways to import and cut footage in Final Cut Pro. So first of all, you want to make sure, press View and make sure that clip skimming and skimming are on. This will allow you to scroll through the footage up here and roughly see where you want to cut the footage before you insert it into the timeline. Okay, so if I press I on my keyboard, this will select the input of the start of the clip, and then say I want to end it here, I press O on my keyboard, and this will give me the option to drag this onto our timeline. So let's drag this onto our timeline. Notice that it is only the select footage in between this yellow box that is dragged in, and not all of the clip. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly choose the rest of the footage. Okay, so I've imported all the footage onto my timeline. I just want to quickly show you another way that we can cut footage in Final Cut Pro, and that is with the blade tool. So on our keyboard, if you press B, you will see that the cursor changes to it looks like a razor blade. So let's press Command and plus to zoom in. Now this clip here was a tad too long, so with this blade tool I can click where I want the clip to be cut. Now I press A on my keyboard to return to the cursor, and I can click and delete the clip I don't want. So using the blade tool is often very handy after you've imported lots of footage. You know, it's helpful to sync things up and make sure things are in the right place and the right order and the correct way they're viewed. So it's also very handy. Now I'm going to be showing you some quick keyboard shortcuts that you will need to know in Final Cut Pro and will be helpful to you. So, say I accidentally deleted one of my shots or made a mistake so blasphemous that I want to undo. So Command Z to undo. That's always very quick and handy to know. If you make a quick mistake, you can just press Command Z. Command X is to cut. Command V is to paste. Command C is to cut, copy, even. And Command V to paste. If you find yourself looking at a black screen and a clip is not playing, then just double check that the clip does not look unhighlighted as such, or it is dimmed. This is done when you press V on the keyboard. This enables and disables clips. So next I'm going to be showing you how to slow down footage and speed it up again. And this comes in handy when you want to add rhythm to your videos and filmmaking, and it is also helpful if you want to use slow motion to help create a dramatic effect as well. And then fast motion is obviously helpful for lots of things such as time lapses. So let's jump into the timeline. Command plus to zoom in. Now with this tree shot, at the moment the trees are essentially just spinning round. I filmed myself obviously spinning around with the camera facing up. So let's watch this quickly. Now I want to give this effect a bit more of a dramatic look, let's say. So I want to speed up the first bit of the footage and then slow down a bit and then speed up the bit afterwards. Now I'll show you what I'm speaking about. Let's press B to get the blade tool up. Now I'm going to decide how much footage I want to be sped up. So I'm going to need quite a lot because I'm going to speed it up quite quick. So let's choose here. So this section will be sped up. Now let's choose a section to be slowed down slightly. So I'm going to choose this, and then this will be sped up as well. A is to go back to our cursor. So here is the kind of speed tools and retiming options. Here you have slow, 50%, fast, normal, custom. You can reverse clips here as well. But I'm going to be showing you the basics. So let's click on the first clip. I want this to be sped up. So press the arrow. I'm going to choose twice as fast. Now I know that this is not going to be fast enough for my liking. So see this purple bar here, this is the current speed of the clip. So if I click to the right and then click on the black bar at the end of it, click and drag. If I drag left, this will speed up the clip even more. And if I do it right, it will obviously make it slower. So I'm going to speed this up quite a bit. Let's select the second clip. Press retime, slow-mo. Let's choose 50%. And for this last clip, press retime again. Choose custom, and I want this to be similar to this speed, if not slightly faster. So I'm going to choose 300%. Let's have a quick look at this. Okay, so let's just make this a bit more slower so it looks a bit more dramatic. And let's extend this clip to get more footage to be slowed down, and then let's speed this up again. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of slow motion and speeding up things in Final Cut Pro. Now I want you guys at home, if you're following this course, to speed up and slow down 3 clips in any way, shape or form. I'd love to see what you guys can do. Next we're going to be looking at the transform tools in Final Cut Pro. This is how you resize things, rotate things. So let's find a clip that I can demonstrate this on. Command plus to zoom in. Click on the clip that you want to transform. Find this button here. All the transform tools are on the right in this bar here. So you will find position, where it is positioned in the shot, rotation of obviously scale, and then you can find options to crop as well. So if you wanted to crop the image from the left, you would drag this slider and it would crop the image. So I'm going to, for this shot, I want the shot to be slightly zoomed in and slightly rotated. So I'm going to press command on my keyboard, click and drag these arrows up and right so it zooms in slightly. And then you'll find here that this slider also does the same thing. So here's the rotation tool. I only want to rotate it slightly so it looks a bit dramatic. Nothing too wacky. And then you see here there's black bits, so I'm going to scale this up. And let's watch this quickly. Okay, so that's transformation. Another tool you can find here is the Ken Burns technique, which essentially adds camera movement to your shots without any camera movement actually happening whilst recording. So if say you had a camera on a tripod, you'd be able to add the effect of zoom in or panning in. So let me show you this on Final Cut Pro. So this is the shot I want to choose. If I press this arrow here, press the crop button, click on Ken Burns. So here, the green rectangle is obviously the start of the shot, and the red rectangle is where the shot will end. So I want our camera to be zoomed in on this rock at the start, and then zoom out slightly but zoom back in onto this waterfall. So I'm going to click and drag the green rectangle slightly in, so it will be in this corner of the shot, and this red rectangle I'm going to click and drag towards the waterfall. Now press this button here to preview your Ken Burns. So that looks pretty smooth. It's a nice way to add camera movement afterwards in post-production. If you've lost the Ken Burns, then click here and it will reappear. So I didn't want as much of the shot to go to the right, so I'm going to quickly click and drag this to the left slightly. Preview again. And look at that, that looks great. So let's press done, and that will save our Ken Burns film movement. So next I'm going to be talking about audio, tidying up audio, making sure that all the levels are correct. So don't overlook audio editing when you are filmmaking, because this could, you know, make your footage or films look professional or to a novice standard easily. And I'll show you an example of this. So as we can see here, these clips are all different clips, but their audio is also different as well. There's no blending in between these audio clips, and it appears that these clips, such as this one, have a higher audio output. So what I'm going to do here to kind of level out all the audio is I'm going to bring the audio up that is lower to match the general audio level that is going on throughout my film. So if you hover over your audio, you'll find two arrows appear. Click and drag up to raise the volume, or click and drag down to lower the volume. So 12 is max. I'm going to bring that down 5, or let's try 11 actually. Let's bring this up slightly. So now the audios are relatively equal. I'm going to bring this down slightly so it matches these clips. And I'm going to bring these down slightly as well. There we go. So now that all the levels are correct, we can begin tidying up the audio to create a smoother film. So if I click here, press detach audio, this will detach the audio from your video clip, and here you can add fades, such as a fade out or a fade in. So I'm going to keep that fade in as it is the start of our film. Now here I'm going to click and drag from the end so the audio seeps over to the next clip. Next I'm going to find this little circle on the end, click and drag to create a fade. Now this will fade out over the next clip, but we also want this audio to fade in slightly, so it creates a kind of audio transition kind of overlay, if you would. So now I'm just going to quickly tidy up all the audio. here we go. So here you can see our audio has been tidied up. I've added lots of fades to blend the cuts in between the clips. This will make your film run a lot smoother, sound way better, and will make your content look way more professional in the end. It does seem a bit fiddly at first, but it is definitely an important part to filmmaking. Okay, so the next part I'm going to be showing you color grading, which is a reason why a lot of people want to get into video editing, and it is a very rewarding part of it, especially when you develop your own style of color grading. And that style is something that comes with a lot of practice, a lot of trial and error, so don't get too frustrated if your footage doesn't look great at the start, you know, it comes with time. First of all, you want to come over here to the generators. Here you can find text, which I'll show you later on, but for now, locate the adjustment layer. 1080p, obviously if your footage is 4K, then go ahead and use that. Click and drag this onto your timeline. Click and drag so it goes all the way across all your footage. Now, this adjustment layer acts as a kind of overall track that you want to put your color correction onto, so it will color grade all the footage on your timeline. Everything underneath the purple bar will be color corrected with the effects on this adjustment layer. So let's go to the effects tab. The effects tab is on the right. So, first of all, in Final Cut Pro you will find a range of effects, okay? Some are great, some not so great. It's all down to personal preference as well, but if you can find effects that you like and get used to, then you can make a good color grade with these effects. So let's just start off basic with color correction. Let's click and drag this onto the adjustment layer. Click the Reel button here, the video inspector, and click the arrow to show our color correcting tools. So here you can find color, saturation and exposure. So first of all, I'm going to adjust the exposure in our clip. So let's choose a still where we can see a lot of information that I can judge our color correction off. So let's choose the white and the black sheep. Okay, so to create a contrast really, which is what is often used in color correction, you can lower the shadows, lower the highlights, and this slider here is the overall exposure, the global exposure. So let's drag this up. And let's bring our midtones up slightly and our shadows down a bit more. See, there's more of a contrast here now. I'll bring the highlights down as well. Bring the midtones up a bit more. Now you've got to play with this and see what you find looks the coolest essentially for your filmmaking. So that looks okay. Let's just see if we can improve it a bit more. Bring the shadows down. Okay, so that looks a bit crisper. Okay, so now let's move on to saturation. Again, we have the overall saturation, shadows, midtones and highlights. So for this I'm going to bring down the shadows quite a lot, bring down the highlights quite a lot as well, boost the midtones slightly, and this gives the footage a kind of washed, worn look, which will add to the filmic look as well. So, color. This as well has global, shadows, midtones, and highlight. If I wanted to give the whole shot, a splash of red, I can just drag this global and drag it to the red, and it will change everything to red. So let's reset that. For the shadows, I want to add a bit of blue, so let's click and drag to the blue. Now obviously we don't want that much blue in our shot. For color grading, we need it to be subtle and quite precise. So let's drag this down slightly, and I want to give our highlights a slight orange color. Bit of warmth for the sheep here. Okay, that looks brilliant. Great, so at the moment our exposure, saturation and color correction is all under this color correction tab. So now I'm going to come to our effects and search film grain. So click and drag the film grain onto the adjustment layer. So in Final Cut Pro, they have two styles of film grain. So iMovie grain is slightly more yellow. Realistic grain is obviously more realistic and just adds the specks of grain. Now keep this on 100, and I choose to put the film grain before the color correction, as this color correction will correct the actual grain pixels that are in your shot. See here, there's more grain now. Looks very filmic, very vintage, and I think that looks great. So next, I'm going to be showing you LUTs. If you don't know what a LUT is, there you can download them from the internet. You can make your own custom LUTs. So let's click and drag this effect onto our adjustment layer. LUTs are very handy in making footage look more filmic and more professional. They are often used to stylize clips much more. So let's go to Load Custom LUT. Now normally when you're downloading LUTs from the internet or you're making them, you save them into a preset folder. So let's quickly locate this preset folder in my computer. Okay, so I essentially have a LUT pack here that I've downloaded from the internet, and I'm going to choose Hollywood Cube. Let's load this LUT. Now let's untick the LUT first of all. So this was our shot before, okay? Now let's add the LUT. Can you see how richer that looks in color? Ranges of colors. It looks like it's added kind of autumn leaves to our shot. LUTs are great for doing this, for kind of changing the color scheme of your footage. And if it's too much, you can obviously turn down the intensity. I want to keep mine all the way up. And there's more options here to adjust levels such as contrast and saturation, but everything here I'm going to keep as it is. So let's hide this. The next bit of color grading I'm going to be showing you is a vignette. A vignette always make things look more dramatic, more interesting, and if they are used in the right way. Obviously you shouldn't just stick a vignette on any sort of footage. Obviously in film or like closed caption shots, there's vignettes are obviously very powerful. The vignettes obviously come from when cameras had a lens hood on. Obviously they still do now, but lens hood creates a vignette, and you can add a vignette in post-production, which is what we are doing now. So this vignette in Final Cut Pro, it gives the border a blur, slight blur, and then it gives the border, it adds darkening around the edges. So let's put the blur amount up quite a lot to start off with. And if you just fiddle with these sliders, you can make it more precise to how you like. So let's just bring the size to around the middle. So this is the center where the vignette does not affect the footage, and in this gap is where the vignette is. So if I click and drag fall off, this will bring the outer edge of the vignette in. As you can see, there are black marks around the edges, so we don't want those. And I think that looks quite dramatic. That looks great. Let's save that. As you hear, you may as well learn that Final Cut Pro has a automatic save option, which is great. I've been saved lots of times when I've been editing a long piece of footage and the program has crashed on me, and it's auto-saved before that, so I can just reopen it and everything is there. So bear that in mind as well, top tip. So if we wanted to, if you like the color correction that you've created, you can save this to be used in other projects and other films. So if you go down here to the Save Effects preset, now here you can name it, so let's name it Filmic 0. And then when we come down to our video tabs, you can scroll down to presets and you find all your presets here. Alternatively, you can search for the preset's name that you've just created, which was Filmic 0. This is currently saving at the moment, the preset, so it is not available. Now, if I wanted to click and drag this onto a piece of footage, that would be added. But for now, we're just going to leave it there. That is how you save a preset. Okay, so the final bit of color grading I'm going to be showing you is how to add a gradient to your filmmaking. Now this can go both ways. These can look extremely cheesy, or they can look absolutely amazing if you do it subtly again. So come down to generators, gradient, click and drag this gradient onto our timeline. Now you want the gradient to be underneath the adjustment layer, so all the effects on the adjustment layer also color correct this gradient as well. Now it's 1,000 times better. Alternatively, you could have put it above the adjustment layer if you don't want the gradient to be color corrected. So let's close this effects tab, drag the gradient all the way across. Now as you can see, we obviously can't see our footage, so if you come to the video inspector, here you will find the opacity. Now click and drag this down. You'll find that the gradient goes slightly see-through and the footage behind is revealed. But using this method, the gradient doesn't look the best it could. So let's bring this all the way up to 100%. Notice the blend mode. So here you can add overlays. And all these different options will overlay the item you are overlaying, in this case the gradient, in different ways. So let's try, for example, multiply. That obviously in this case doesn't look great. Let's try screen, and that is obviously too bright. So let's stick to overlay for now. Again, here is where you will find experimenting will help you a lot. Now I want to bring the opacity down slightly. So let's watch a bit of this right now. And that looks great, looks quite filmic. So I want to change quickly the top color. You can change the color of the gradient. So if we come over here to the generator inspector, here are the two colors. This is the top color and the bottom color. So here, let's try like a light orange. If I added a full heavy orange, it looks obviously a bit too dramatic and the effect is given away. So again, be subtle about color correcting, bring it in. There we are, we have a nice orange. Let's see how this looks on another clip. Okay, fantastic. There is now the last stage of color correcting when using adjustment layers is to tidy up any clips that may be over or underexposed. Okay, so as you can see here slightly, this is underexposed, okay? So we want to go to our effects tab, bring in the color corrector again, so this will be added to the clip that we. So this will be added to the single clip. Let's go to color board quickly, press exposure. Now we want to bring the shadows up because they're not seen that well. So let's bring those up and then bring the midtones down slightly and bring the overall exposure up. There we go. That looks a lot more clearer. Okay, so our footage is looking a lot more cinematic. Great, okay. So next I'm going to be showing you in this course is text and what text options are available in Final Cut Pro and how you can use them in different ways. Okay, so come over here to our generators, press titles. Whoops. Press titles. Now go, if you scroll down you will see the different options that are available. Obviously you have the most basic ones where you can just add simple white text onto your timeline, and then you obviously have 3D text as well, which is good for kind of cinematic introductions. And down here you have the basic lower thirds. This is extremely handy when you want to add, say, in a documentary, someone's name and their profession. So say you had John Doe and then you had psychiatrist underneath, you could add it with the lower thirds. With this basic title, this is also useful when adding subtitles. So okay, so I'm going to show you how to add subtitles quickly. Actually, I'm going to begin with showing the 3D text. Down here there is a fade 3D which has transitions at the start and end of the text where the text fades in and fades out. So click and drag this onto your timeline. So here you will notice, press the T to find where you can edit all the transitions. So here is the speed in and out of the text. I'm going to change this to accelerate and then speed out to decelerate. You can go through these transition types and see what fits best for you. So now we're going to edit how the text looks. So click and drag, type in your text. For this I'm going to type in sheep, trees and waterfalls. As you can see, this is way too big, so let's click and drag, change the size down so we can see all the text for starters. And then we can change the font here. Let's change it to something a bit wacky. Let's try duality. Okay, now I want the sheep, trees and waterfalls to be on different lines as well, so we can do this by clicking just before a word and pressing enter. Now the sheep, trees is on top and waterfalls is beneath. Here you can click and drag to bring this up to the center. See where the vertical and horizontal axes meet there, that is the center. Okay, next we're going to look at tracking. So I'm going to click and drag to select only this to be edited. The tracking here is these spaces in between the letters. So I'm going to bring these closer together. That looks a bit more interesting. And I'm going to highlight all. The line spacing will bring the sentences closer together. Okay, so down here there are a few options where you can add glows, drop shadows, substances. Essentially changes how the 3D text looks. So let's have a look. Let's change the front edge to ridge. Now let's bring the depth up. And this will increase how far forward and backwards the 3D text comes. So that looks a bit better, a bit more defined. Let's add a bit of weight. There we go. So that makes it look a bit more cartoony. Let's bring that down a bit. Okay, here you can change the color. So I want to make it let's go for a kind of turquoisey green color. You can change it to matte or textured. I think that looks quite interesting, so let's keep that. Let's go down to glow. So let's change this to white to start off with. Bring the radius up. So this will add the glow to the outer edges of the text. Bring up the blur to define it a bit more. Again, this is personal preference, so experiment and see what text you can come up with. I'd love to see what custom text you guys can make, so definitely keep me in the loop. Okay, let's increase the blur all the way. Now let's choose drop shadow. This will provide a shadow to the text to make it look more 3D. Add blur all the way. And then if we bring the distance up, you can see the shadow appears slightly. So if I put this all the way up, you can see where the shadow is here. So let's bring this down slightly. And that looks amazing. So let's save that. Let's click off. And make sure to bring this text to the start. So this will act as a kind of introduction text to your short film. Notice as well that the text is underneath the gradient and the adjustment layer. These will grade the text and often makes the text look similar to your footage, and it will set it apart from other films. So this is how it would look naturally. Doesn't look so there we go. You can see it doesn't look as defined and corrected. So let's Command and Z to undo that and bring it back underneath the color correction. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to add these lower thirds. This can also be helpful if you want to show where a location is. Okay. So, here you can click on each individual piece of text. Here you can add the name and description, such as a person's name and occupation. For now, I'm just going to change this to the location. This was filmed at Four Trails Waterfall. Which is located in South Wales. Okay, so here again, if I click one of the texts, then hold down Command and click, this will select both pieces of text, and from here you can adjust where they are in the frame. Say you could put it on the waterfall itself, or on the other side, in the middle. So I'm going to put this on the right, and I'm going to click the South Wales text, which is the bottom text, and click off, re-click back on it, and you can drag the text without moving the other piece of text. Okay, that is quite informative. So, if you're doing this course with me and you want to be showing me your work, which I can help you with, then definitely add some basic 3D text, add some lower thirds and any other text that you find interesting, and show it to me. So last but not least, I'm going to be showing you the transitions in Final Cut Pro, which you can add to your film. So come over to the right, you will find transitions. Again, there is a range of transitions which are amazing and some not so good. So stay away from the ones that seem quite cliche. Overlays, blurs, flashes are obviously very generally acceptable. So let's go for a simple cross dissolve. This will overlay two clips normally, but if you add it to the end or the start of your timeline, it will create a fade to black. So first of all, I'm going to add a fade to black to our final clip. So let's zoom in, Command plus. Notice here, when you say you wanted to make the transition longer, then you have to click and drag this grey box to make it longer. But notice that when you hover over the top corners, a different symbol appears. This is not the symbol you want to extend the transition. You want to find the symbol with the two arrows and the bracket. I will explain later why this mistake causes trouble. So let's click and drag this across. Watch the fade to black. While I'm here, I may as well shorten this text. Okay, let's watch the fade to black. Great, so it's kind of ending to your film. Now next I'm going to be showing you some more cross dissolves. Let's cross dissolve these two shots of the sheep. Command plus to zoom in. Okay, so back to this confusion between these two elements. If I click and drag the reel, see, notice that the two arrows have a kind of film reel underneath. If I click and drag that does not extend the transition, but it extends the actual clip. So as you can see, this clip has been lengthened. Let's press Command and Z to undo that. So let's make this a long cross dissolve. It helps to make footage look a bit dreamy. Okay, let's preview this. Great. Okay. Zoom out. Next, I'm going to be showing you blur transitions. So generally speaking, you could use all of these. This radial one is a bit extreme. So directional blur. This is a blur where essentially the footage has been smudged sideways. Gaussian blur or Gaussian blur is a full blur with mix of horizontal and vertical blurs, so it's more extreme. And you find things like zoom and pan, where it creates an array of blur. This also looks quite epic if you use it correctly. So for now, I'm just going to use the directional blur. Let's add this to the shot of our trees. Command plus to zoom in. Now I want to make this a quick transition, almost quite snappy, to keep the audience interested in your film. Okay, let's watch this quickly. Great, it blends the fast motion and the slow-mo pretty good. Now I'm just going to add a zoom and pan to just before the first waterfall shot. Now this is now I'm just going to add the zoom and pan to the waterfall shots. So I'm going to make this quite a long transition, sorry, quite a short transition, as we want to make it very brief again. Okay, here we go. There we are, almost unnoticeable, but you know, subtle is very key in filmmaking. Sometimes less is more, you know. Okay, so I'm going to add one more transition at the start of our timeline. If I press all, you know, you can scroll through these effects and see which ones suit your footage. I quite like flash, that's obviously quite good. It just creates a white light, obviously. And then this flashback one is quite dreamy, quite psychedelic. So let's put that on the start of the timeline. And let's bring this across to where the text is. And see how that looks as an introduction. Okay, cool. So that is transitions. Command minus to zoom out. Now we're going to export our footage. So make sure everything is, you know, tidied up. There's no, you know, random bits of audio anywhere. Like I said, the text earlier, I had to drag back in. Everything looks pretty smooth, so I'm going to zoom out, press File, Master Default, Master File Default, actually. Now let's give this a name. I'm going to call it Waterfalls 100. Now let's go to Settings and leave the format as computer. Video codec should always be H.264 for better quality. That's the best codec for the best quality. Resolution should obviously be 1920 by 1080p. If you're working with HD, high definition footage, or if you're using 4K, then obviously use this option. Keep everything else the same here, then press next, and you are ready to go with the export. There we are, guys. So that is my Final Cut Pro course on how to edit footage from the import stage to the basics of color correcting, transitions, transforming, rotation, adding text. So if you want to be involved with this course, then please do find resources attached, or if you do have your own footage, then that is obviously more interesting as well. And if you make a video, then please send it to the course participants so we can watch this and I can help give you tips on your filmmaking. You know, I'd love to help you guys out. This is why I'm doing it. I'm trying to provide my experience and knowledge to other people who want to get into video editing, which is something I wish I had when I started, but obviously I didn't have that and I was self-taught. So I'm glad to give it back to you guys. Okay? Thank you again. Make sure to follow me, and thanks.